I'm currently on maternity leave, which is just wild to say, but I did not want to leave you hanging with no content the entire time. So I decided, let me go back to the vault of episodes I've recorded and pull out some that are not only my favorite, but also really resonated with you whenever they initially aired. So over the next couple weeks, I'm going to continue to share some re-air episodes that I know are going to be really supportive for you when it comes to increasing your profitability, assorting, making really solid strategy decisions or strategic decisions in your product business. This episode that you're going to hear today originally aired, I want to say early April 2024, and it's all about the power of the product edit. And I just love this. I could talk about this all day. So I'm really excited to drop this back into your feed because honestly, if you're anything like me, you can listen to a podcast episode a year ago and have no memory of it a year later. So I'm like, you're going to love this. If you listened to it before, just give it another listen because I know it's packed with so much information that's going to be really supportive for you. So let's get into this replay chat.
The power of the edit. That is what we are talking about on this episode today. I love this conversation. I said it probably 15 times while I was recording it. Maybe it got edited out, hopefully. Hopefully the people that I pay to edit the podcast edited out the fact that I said that a million times. But the conversation is so incredibly important, especially for those of you that are listening that are in the scaling phase of your business. When you are taking your business to that next level, you need to have this ability that buyers have, which is a skill that you can learn. And that is the ability to remove emotion from the design and the buying stage of your product collection. And by not having the emotion in, you start to pay attention to the data. And the data tells you how many choices you need to have, what type of choices you need to have. And you build an assortment, you build a collection around what is actually going to drive your business and really move the needle in your business. And that all comes down to your ability to edit and be holding yourself accountable to that, putting on that CEO hat and saying, I'm going to look at the data. And even if I don't love it, I'm going to follow what my customer is telling me that they want. Because at the end of the day, we are doing this for our customers, for our buyers. We are doing it to make a profit and grow our businesses. So I hope that you enjoyed the chat. You're probably going to want to take some notes, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey friend, quick question for you. Are you feeling stuck with how to get your brand to stand out on Faire? I'm asking you because as a buyer myself, I can tell you that there are just so many brands out there vying for the attention of these buyers, but I know that your brand has something so special and it needs to be seen. I put together a private podcast for you that goes deeper into what buyers are really looking for on the Faire platform and how you can stand out from the crowd to grow your wholesale business and really land those dream buyers. So if this resonates with you, head to the link in the show notes for instant access. Welcome back to the Buyerside Chat. My name is Kristen Fisher. And on this podcast, I take you inside the mindset of a buyer to help you grow and scale your product business profitably. So the topic that we are covering today, I am super passionate about it. It is like a buyer's dream to talk about this. And it's not always an easy thing to learn because we have emotion tied to business. So what I call this conversation is the power of the edit, the power of the product edit. It's really about taking control of the ability to be the editor of your business, the editor of your product assortment and collection, so that you're making those editing decisions for your customer, for your buyer. And like I said, it is definitely not an easy thing to do at all. So the first thing is you really have to take your emotion out of the decision making. That is something that really takes such a long time to train yourself to do. I think whenever we start our businesses, we're creating them for ourselves more than likely. Like if you designed a product, you probably started it because it was something that you creatively fell into. You're a creative person or you're an artist and you're just kind of designing and playing around, and all of a sudden people ask you if they can buy it from you. Or you're like, you know what if I throw this up on Etsy? Let's just see what happens. And then suddenly you have a business. Or you are, feeling this need out there and your business idea kind of comes out of that need. Like for me with Boku, when I started Boku, I started thinking about it in 2016. I got married in 2017. And that was like the height of the bridesmaid proposal gift box. Like that was the thing to do. It was all over Pinterest and everyone was doing it. Okay. So I was experiencing during a time where I was engaged and getting married. Also, a ton of my friends were getting engaged and getting married, and having babies or having big life moments. And so I found on the Boku side that first of all, for proposing to my bridesmaids, I made the boxes, and I saw a picture of them recently and they were god awful. They were hideous, but I had fun doing it. Okay. It was kind of like the start of Boku. I should maybe share that picture, just to kind of show how far I've come. But that was kind of the beginning stages of my business idea. And then, like I said, when all my friends and, people in my life, family were having all these big life moments and I was trying to gift them, there weren't a ton of gift box brands at the time, the way that there are now. There are so many gift box brands, and guess what? There's room for all of us. I am so supportive of every other gift box brand because there are a million needs and reasons for gifting. So with that said, whenever I launched Boku or had that idea, there weren't a lot of them. And the ones that were out there that were doing a really great job of it were a higher price point, more luxe, or just it was harder to get that like $50 box. And so that's where I was like, you know what? This could be an idea for me to do. And also, side note, still to this day, Boku is the only gift box brand that gift wraps all the product in the boxes. And that was like my thing and is still my thing. I love it so much. So the point of this rambling backstory is that I created a business for myself out of a need that I found for myself. And, I asked around, I did my market research, I built a business plan, I did all the things, but it started out as a need for myself. So whenever that happens, you have your emotions tied into it. So I started out by, buying some things that I knew that I wanted to gift to my friends. And because I had a background as a buyer, I was able to read sales and read reactions pretty quickly and see things that worked, things that didn't, whatever. But even with that background, and still to this day, with that knowledge, with that background, with what I teach to my clients, I still have to remind myself, it is not a personal thing. I need to remove my emotion from it. And if a product doesn't sell that I'm obsessed with, it doesn't sell. I can't keep going against the grain and forcing my customers to like something. So what this all boils down to is we are not buying, we are not designing for ourselves anymore. When you get past that kind of fun exploratory phase of your business where you're trying to gather data and you're trying to see what your customers respond to and you're building a customer base, you have emotion tied into it and that's okay. But then when it becomes a business and you are here to make money, you are here to turn a profit, like you're not just doing it as a side gig anymore, myself included, you now have to take the emotions out of it and your customers consistently tell you what they want, even if you don't want to hear it. So you have to take those blinders off. And once you open yourself up to, I'm going to read the data, I am going to just pull emotion out of this and not be so emotionally tied to every collection, it starts to become a little bit easier. And it honestly allows you to step into that true CEO mindset because you are running a business. You are not running a side hustle that you're super emotionally attached to. That doesn't mean that you aren't emotionally attached to your business. You don't love your business so much, or sometimes hate your business so much, which also happens. Love, hate sometimes. Mostly love, I hope, for you. But that's the moment whenever you are stepping into that CEO role and you're really saying, okay, I'm here to make things happen. I'm here to make a profit. And in order to do that, I need to edit in my business. I cannot bring in all the things I love, or I cannot design and bring to life every amazing idea that comes into my mind. I know I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I've never done a true episode really dedicated to this topic. And it is so important to really kind of let it sink in and really think about, are there some areas in your business that you're maybe holding on to because you have some personal attachment to it? Or Is there something in your collection that's been hanging around for forever that maybe, was a bestseller when it first came out and you personally are so attached to it, but it's just slowly kind of dipped down and down and down, and it's no longer a bestseller, but you're hanging on to it? Sometimes you need to just bless and release those things, let them go. And let's be honest, I'm talking about your collection and your product offering here in this conversation, but this also applies to editing things on your to-do list. This applies to how you operate your business. Sometimes this applies to people in your life and also in your business. If we want to stick with the business conversation, we can do that. But maybe you have somebody on your team that isn't quite the best fit for you or for your business growth, and you're kind of outpacing, and now you have to put that CEO hat on and say, maybe this isn't the right thing. And you need to make some editing decisions around the people that are surrounding you, the processes that you have, the things that you do in your day-to-day. So think about it holistically. But for the conversation of today, we're going to really talk about your product collection. Truly, that ability that you have to be the editor of your business is going to ultimately result in a more cohesive assortment, a more cohesive product collection, which drives your conversion rate and it drives profit. Because at the end of the day, you have less choices. Usually, you'll have less choices for the customer to choose from or for the buyer to choose from, which means you're carrying less inventory depth. And ultimately, that means that you're going to turn through that product and make a better profit. Oftentimes, you can negotiate a better price on those so that your margin is higher there. There's a lot of things that start to happen. Also, your conversion rate. Let's talk about that for a second. So, human nature is less is more. We know that in so many areas of our life, but when it comes to shopping, the consumer's mind gets overwhelmed when there are too many choices. So a really easy example of this is off-price retailers. Okay. Obviously, you go into a TJ Maxx or a Marshalls or a Home Goods, and there is so much stuff. So much stuff. And if you're not in the right mood, like I don't know about you, but for me, if I walk into one of those stores and I'm like on the edge of a bad mood, I'm in a bad mood, or I'm looking for something specific and I walk in there, it is not a good idea because I just get irritated. It's like piles of crap. But if I walk in there and I'm like, I don't really care if I find something today, I'm just looking, then that's okay. But there's a time and a place for it. The average person does not want to come to a small business, to a boutique, to a brand and have to like sift through page after page after page of product. So you really easily can tip over the scale there and have too much product if you're not careful. And that's where this ability to edit really comes into play. You don't want to give your customers or your buyers so many choices and it results in decision fatigue because they'll come to your site, they'll scroll around for a little bit. They might be like, what do they sell? That's never a good thing. If you're a boutique owner listening to this, this is usually where that happens because you're bringing in product from other brands and sometimes it gets off the rails and it's like, whoa, too many things on here. If you're a maker or a designer and you have your own brand, this often happens with like stationery lines. I see that happen often where it's just like hundreds of card SKUs and sticker SKUs and notepad SKUs. That's, I think, can get really kind of out of control there because it's a lower cost investment to put that up on your site. And so there's usually a lot of SKUs on there. But by nature, those businesses do have more SKUs. So your customer does kind of know going into it, there's going to be more. But with that said, there is something said to having too much. If you have too much in your assortment on your website and you have multiple pages of product, people are going to get tired. And you could have a bestseller buried on page 8 that barely gets seen because no one actually makes it to page 8 or scrolls down to eternity to find it. So it's really about giving your customer less choices, but a really great edited collection of those choices so that they are the best of the best with some fringe things that you want to test out, with some new trend ideas that you want to bring in. You can still have a range of product, but your bread and butter is protected. And then you're testing out some new ideas and you bring in some like fashion moments, some things that are trending. If you haven't listened to the trend episodes, particularly the one with Jessica Richards, that was a great episode where she talks about how to kind of filter trends through the lens of your brand. Like there are some moments where you can try things like that, but overall you want to be edited and you want to understand how many choices you even should have to be optimized, because it's different for every business. And to be honest, it's also different for different businesses within different seasons. So you might need more SKUs for holiday because there are obviously more sales happening during that time period. And perhaps your business lends itself really nicely to holiday. So Boku example, obviously gift box business. Holiday season is huge for me. So I will have more gift box choices on the site versus July. And it's kind of a dead zone. People aren't really shopping for gift boxes aside from birthdays and maybe a client onboarding gift. There's not a major gifting season there. So I will need less SKUs, less choices during the summer months versus the holiday months. I think a lot of businesses probably follow similar paths to that. So you're probably understanding what I'm saying here. So what it comes down to is understanding your data and understanding how to, first of all, read your reports, but also how to figure out how many choices you really need. And that gives you essentially a framework. So what I recommend to start to figure this out is to take a look at your product selling reports, and you can leverage Shopify. So there is, there's a sell-through by product report, I believe, which is units sold, units on hand, and your sell-through. You could also pull your product by sales, but I don't think that has inventory on it. I'm questioning myself now because I just run them and I don't always pay attention to what the report name is. It's like habit. But you want to pull your selling report that has sales and inventory. It can be dollars or units. It doesn't really matter. I would say depends on the type of business that you have, whether you want to look at the two, but pull one that has sales and inventory both on the same report. Okay. So then pull that report. I would go through and I'd remove any products that have zero inventory and zero sales. And the reason for that is, Shopify, you could have products that you keep on there that you might bring back in the future. So there's no inventory, but you don't want to delete the product listing, even though it's not live on your site. You don't want that in this report because the point of this is to get a true count. Okay. So you want to get rid of the stuff that's zero sales or zero inventory, and also get rid of any seasonal products that are not live on the site. So maybe you have inventory in that old product that's not live on the site and you're just leaving it there because you're going to bring it back, let's say next holiday season or next spring season, you're going to bring it back. So it wasn't even available to sell. So take anything off, just like delete it off that report or move it to another tab. Doesn't really matter. Anything that has zero sales, zero inventory, and also has zero sales and you do have inventory, but it's not live on the site. So remove all of that. Then I want you to rank the product from the sales units or the sales dollars, whichever you pulled, from highest to lowest. Okay, so highest to lowest, sales units or sales dollars, whichever metric you have in there. And then I want you to do a little bit of math. This is really easy math. Okay, so take a look at, let's just use unit sales for the example of this. You're going to take your unit sales and you're going to total up what 80% equates to. So 80% of your unit sales, and then just put a little line there. And so you know where the marker is at and count how many choices fell into that 80% of your sales. And then look at the total count of choices that are on your entire list and look at what percent that count of choices makes up to your total. Oftentimes, 20% of your choices is driving 80% of your sales. It's not always exact math, but usually there is that gap. There's that disparity between the sales to the choice count. And what that means, so let's just say it's perfect. It perfectly works out that way. 80% of your sales are coming from just the top 20% of the choices that you even have out there. That means on the inverse, you have 80% of your offering only doing 20% of your sales. So if that is the case, that means that you probably have too many choices and you can knock some off the bottom. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't have that bottom 80% because you need that to round out your collection and to fill your fixtures in the store and really have a balanced, beautiful assortment. But that just means that you probably could get rid of at least 10% because that's probably just dead weight with like no sales. Do that same exact exercise with inventory. So look at how many SKUs are taking up 80% of your inventory. And sometimes you'll see that, like, let's say the top 20% of your choices are driving 80% of your sales, but only 60% of your inventory is sitting in there. So that probably means you have lost opportunities, missed opportunities, and you could put some more of your investment behind your inventory in those top 20% of your SKUs. And guess what? Suddenly you find yourself more profitable because you're not spending money on the excess bottom feeding SKUs that are not driving any sales for you. And you're putting that into your top performing products. And you can negotiate a better cost because you're buying more, you're investing more into that top. So you get a better profit margin. So it all kind of works together when you look at it in that regard. Okay, so that's just like looking at the data and doing a little bit of math. When you start to do this consistently, so I recommend doing this, like let's say it's every quarter, or if you have very clear collections, I would do this exercise for the start of that collection's selling to the end of its full priced life cycle. Do it for like each season. So you're not just doing it once for the whole year. That is going to be such skewed data, but look at holiday, look at spring, look at summer, or however you break down your collections. I would do it that way. So I honestly, for me, because my business is just kind of newness trickles in, and sometimes I do have a big collection, I look at it quarterly because I don't need to like slice and dice it a million different ways. I like to just kind of have an idea of how many gift boxes I need to have on the site at all times. I actually recently did this like December into January this year. And I found that I was a little over assorted and I could be more profitable by getting rid of a whole section of my site. And I did that. And it was really freaking scary. And I'm still nervous that it wasn't the right decision, but I'm sticking with it. I'm taking my advice. I know that in my gut, it's right for the long term, but you just got to do it sometimes and just see what happens. And if it doesn't work, you can always bring more things back. Like we are in control of our businesses. We can like play around with things, read data, test things out. If it doesn't work, then try something else or bring it back. You know, it's not like the end of the world. So that's what I did. We'll see. So let's talk about now you have these numbers. And once you look at a few seasons, you can start to clearly see, I never need this bottom 10%. And that is usually X number of choices. On the flip side, you can say, all right, let me look at the top 70% of your choices. How much of your sales does that represent? What's that count? Okay, maybe I should be targeting that number for my collection at all times. And also that doesn't always mean newness. This is a whole separate conversation. I'm really just like love talking about this. But this number that I'm talking about, this could be carryover product that is still selling on your website or is still selling and available for wholesale from prior collections. And then you have also your new collection selling simultaneously. So this doesn't mean every season you design into this full number and you bring in this full number. This just means this is how many full price choices you should have selling all the time, approximately. Okay. Please DM me if you have any questions on this at Kristen Fisher Coaching. I'd love to talk about this because clearly it's one of my favorite topics. Okay. So now you start to get an idea of about how many choices you need to have full price each season. Okay. Now you want to take a look within the data that you pulled and start to see if you can identify some attribute commonalities that you can draw from that top percent of your offering that is driving the 80% of your business. So let's say it is 20% of your choices are driving 80% of your sales. So let's look at that 20% and start to say, what are some common things that are working well for me consistently. This could be different for every type of business, but I usually like to look at things like color or pattern or scent or fragrance or metal finish or kind of you name it, whatever makes sense for your business, but something that is like a selling attribute that is a physical attribute that your customer will be gravitated towards or drawn to. Okay. So like if you're saying, let's say it's scents or fragrances, is it florals? Is it, I don't know. I'll always try and do examples of things on this and then my brain just blanks out, but you get the gist. Can you kind of bucket them out? What you might start to see is that you have a nice range of things. And that's a really good indicator that your customer or your buyer is building out collections, essentially. They're building by purchasing a balanced offering. And then when you look at the things that are at the bottom, so the bottom 20%, what's in there? Are they duplicates of the things at the top of your list? Because that means you just are over assorted and you did not edit out things. And you said, I like both of these blue florals. I'm going to bring both of the blue florals in and they're both going to sell well. And it turns out only one of them is needed and the other one was not needed. And you probably should have edited that. Or 2 floral fragrances, one was better than the other. There are usually clear distinctions at the top and the bottom of duplication. And that is usually what tells you, okay, I have too much. If you're an apparel company or an apparel boutique, I love doing this exercise for apparel because you can look at your tops to bottoms ratio. You can you can slice and dice this so many different ways. You can also do this same exercise. So if you are a more established business owner listening to this and you have multiple choices in multiple categories, so let's say apparel boutique owner, you can do this by looking at the category level and doing this same exercise and starting to see how are you over assorted or under assorted in your different categories? Where is there opportunity? What's the ideal choice count within each category? So like if you're a stationery designer, take your card line and do this just isolated to cards or just isolated to, if you have a bunch of notepads, start to do that with it. But usually it's cards that gets over assorted. So hopefully this is making a little bit of sense. Like I said, come into the DMs and talk to me about this. But at the end of the day, getting really clear on those attributes and the commonalities that you can drive will help you to make better decisions when you're planning your collection or designing into your collection. So when you're looking at, okay, here's the total choice count that I need. Here is the type of attributes that typically work well for me in that top 20% during a spring and summer collection or a fall or holiday collection. So different product attributes. I didn't mention price point, but this is another great attribute to look at. When you're looking at that top 20%, what range of price points do you have up there? Do you have enough of a range? If not, maybe you need to add in more price points and push those to get more up into that top so that you have a really balanced assortment at the top. Usually you can drive more average order value. There's a lot to be said about your ability to focus in on what really moves the needle in your business, and that is that top 20%. So editing and getting really crystal clear on what needs to be in that top 20% to actually move the needle on your business is a way better use of your time and energy versus the bottom 20% just because you couldn't make a decision and you couldn't edit out something. So that power of the edit is just so important to your profitability. And at the end of the day, your customers will thank you for it because it's going to make their decision for purchasing so much easier when it comes to landing on your site or coming into your store or landing on your fair page or your catalog. It'll be really clear what you stand for and what they should buy from you versus having any type of confusion. This is really kind of the start and the foundation of an assortment framework and having that guideline to help you become better at editing and being really in tune with what works and what levers you can pull on your collection to be able to drive more sales and increase that conversion rate and become more profitable. It's really a foundational piece to the puzzle. And you're not expected to know this when you first launch your business because why would you, right? But when you were at that point where you were like, I am getting ready to scale, or I am in scaling mode and my business is growing rapidly, but I don't have the cash. I don't have cash at the bottom line to be able to keep investing back into it at the rate that I'm growing. So you're stalling out. This is something you can go back to because chances are you have too much product or too much depth. And when you get really clear on this, it starts to open up kind of the floodgates on how you can play with your assortment to get the results that you want. This is something that we cover inside the Product Scaling Intensive, and that group is still going on live right now. It has been so much fun. If you missed out on getting on the wait list, I would encourage you, I'll put the link in the show notes here, but I would encourage you to sign up for that so that you are the first to know when the doors open again. So like I said, I'll put it in the show notes, but this is something that we've been talking about inside that group, just how to really drive more profit in your business so that you can scale and invest back into your business because you have the profit to do so. So I love it so much. I could keep talking about this, but I'm approaching the 30-minute mark, so I will rein it in. But I am so appreciative that you tuned in and listened to this episode today. If you find this to be helpful, please, please, please share, tag a friend, leave a review. It all means so much to me, and it helps other product businesses get in touch and find the support because we are a small but mighty group of people, and I would just be so grateful to you. Real quick, I need to tell you about something that's been a total game changer for so many of my clients and students. If you've been trying to grow on Faire, but your orders have been slow, your market results have been less than desirable, or you're just not getting discovered the way that you know you should, this is for you. So I created a free workshop called the Faire Success Blueprint Workshop, and I teach you the exact framework that my students have used to land brand new retailers, have their best Faire markets ever, and even grow their wholesale revenue by over 50% or more compared to last year. We've had some that have grown upwards of like up 500% to last year. Seriously, this is the strategy that is working right now on the Faire platform. In under 45 minutes, I walk you through what buyers are actually looking for on Faire right now, why most brands stay invisible and how to fix it, and a proven 3-step strategy to stand out to sell more on Faire without adding 100 new SKUs or even rewriting your entire page. So if you're ready to finally turn Faire into a consistent, high-performing sales channel, head to kristenfishercoaching.com/Faire Blueprint or click the link in the show notes. You can watch it right away. You can take notes and get your exact strategy to start showing up like the brand that your dream retailers are already looking for. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today. If you are loving the show, I would be so beyond grateful if you would rate and review the podcast and share it with one of your biz besties to help spread the word. I hope that you absolutely crush your sales this week. I'll be back to chat with you next Monday.